I should admit right from the start that I don't have a lot of nostalgia when it comes to classic survival horror. My first foray into the genre was Dead Space in 2008, and by then survival horror had evolved well past what it once was. I was about -1 years old when Resident Evil first released, so I didn't get into that series until the RE2 remake in 2019. I still haven't played Silent Hill, and I'm sure that negates a lot of my gamer cred, but just because I don't have any nostalgia for the genre doesn't mean I don't absolutely adore it. I've played all the OG Resident Evil games, except for Code Veronica, and I'm sure I'll get to it at some point, and I understand why they are remembered so fondly. They are super fun, and I'm sure they were incredibly terrifying back in the day. They control like ass now, but that's besides the point. A lot of the genius of survival horror comes from how powerless you feel against overwhelming odds. Sure, you typically have a weapon of some kind to defend yourself with, but it's usually limited and can only get you so far. These games are so much fun to play because they make you feel like you are actually surviving by the skin of your teeth. Couple that with fantastic settings and an emphasis on ambiance, and you've got a combo that'll raise your blood pressure every time you play. I love games that do it well, and the game I want to talk about today, in this video, does this extremely well. Survival horror is a genre that indie developers have a knack for absolutely nailing, and what better example of this is there than Signalis? Signalis is a game I saw floating around near the end of last year, and on a whim I decided to buy it and check it out for myself. Admittedly, I mostly play AAA games, which is fine and whatever, but that does mean I often miss out on a ton of amazing experiences that just don't have the massive marketing budget of a big publisher. I didn't want that to be the case with this game, and thank God I did, because oh my god is this game outstanding. I haven't been this freaked out and completely unnerved by a game in years. Not only is this game one big love letter to classic survival horror with an eye-popping anime-esque art style, but it is also one of the most unsettling games I've ever played. And on top of that, this masterpiece was made by a main team of 2 people, with a few others working on sound and music. I can barely even process the amount of time and energy that went into this game. Rose Engine, if you end up watching this, just know that this game is a tremendous accomplishment, and you should be so proud of the final product. Alright, sorry about that, just had to gush for a second there because I just love this game so very much. Now, I'll actually get into why I love it. That long ass intro about survival horror was important because this game is indie survival horror at its best. If you're just clamoring for the good old days of RE2 and Silent Hill, then this game was made for you. The gameplay of Signalis is basically the epitome of classic survival horror with a modern shine of quality applied to it. You have an inventory system ripped straight from the PS1 era that forces you to be mindful at all times of how much you're carrying. You only have 6 inventory slots for all your guns, ammo, healing items, and key items, which limits how much you can have with you at any one time. This inventory system is brutal and makes you constantly reevaluate what you need to keep with you. Ammo is severely limited, and you'll end up switching out what guns you have with you just so you can use whatever ammo you currently have. Thankfully, they have an item box that you can access from any safe room that you can use to hold your crap. This style of inventory can be rough at times, but that's also kind of the point. You have to be smart with what you keep with you, and if you aren't, then that means more traveling through the nightmarish areas and fighting the equally nightmarish enemies. This inventory system fits in really well with the puzzle solving this game has, and oh boy is there a ton of puzzle solving in this game. I feel like one of the marks of a great puzzle in a video game is being easy enough to actually be solvable without a guide, and being hard enough that you feel smart for solving it. Signalis nailed this aspect to a T. The puzzle solving in this game might honestly be my favorite part of the whole game, and that's saying something. Every puzzle I was presented with was so expertly crafted and well thought out that I felt so much accomplishment every time I solved one. A few of them can be a bit tedious to complete, I kinda just guessed my way to the solution a couple times, but overall the puzzles are great. This aspect of the game also introduces one of the most unique elements of the game. Your playable character has a radio, and said radio is very often incorporated into the puzzle solving and even some of the combat. Rose Engine found some really interesting ways to use this feature, and it adds so much to the puzzle solving and the exploration of the game. Plus, some of the sounds and music that come from the radio literally sent shivers down my spine. Everything you need to solve puzzles is either right at your fingertips or hidden in the hellish areas you traverse, so it is imperative that you explore as much of the environment as possible. In order to have all the pieces to the different puzzles in each area, you have to be thorough with your exploration. This is another example of something that's core to the genre that Signalis just does really well. A good survival horror game encourages you to explore your surrounding area and rewards you for doing so. There are secrets and items you can miss entirely if you don't check every room and corner you can. The level design is really good, and Rose Engine did an amazing job of tying progress through the game with the exploration. You spend a lot of time in the areas, and I think they did a great job of making sure you spend just the right amount of time so that it doesn't get old. Signalis not only did an impressive job with combining the level design with classic puzzle solving, but it also gives you spine-chilling environments to do so in. The majority of the game takes place on a mysterious planet in a mysterious colony filled with killer androids. I'm not sure if I can describe just how creepy the atmosphere and environments are. Every section and hallway is oozing with dystopian eeriness that makes you apprehensive to enter each new room. Thanks to the puzzle solving you do, you really have to explore every area to its fullest, and even without that, you should do it anyway because they look really cool. The locations you explore all feel unique from each other while maintaining a theme and consistency in the designs. All the locations fit into the world the game is presenting perfectly, and that makes it feel much more like a real place that could actually exist. Even with the stylized art design, it still feels very grounded in reality, which can be hard to balance, but it's done well here. The combat of Signalis is also really well done. You control the player character from a top-down 2.5D perspective, and I love this way more than the tank controls a lot of older survival horror games use. The aiming feels reminiscent of the tank controls of old, but is much easier to control. You and your enemies exist in the same 2.5D space, so you don't have to worry about aiming up or down. Just point it right at whatever horror is coming at you and fire away. It can be a bit finicky at times and is a tad unreliable if you're rushing. The important thing is taking your time and aiming carefully. This can be hard to do with the pressure of enemies surrounding you, but that's kind of the point. In total, I don't think the combat is the strongest part of the game, but that's not saying much because the whole game is great. It's heightened a lot by the fact that enemies you're up against are real freaky and aren't easily taken out. They don't stay dead either, and you have to literally torch the corpse to finish the job. The enemies of Signalis are actually rogue androids called replicas that have turned evil under mysterious circumstances. Speaking of, if I had to pick a single word to describe the story of Signalis, then mysterious would be it. Normally, I'm not a big fan of super vague and symbolic storytelling. I definitely think it has its place, and when it's done well, it works great, but it just usually doesn't work for me, at least most of the time. However, in this game I actually really enjoyed it, which kind of surprised me if I'm being honest. The story of Signalis is very weird, and I didn't totally know what was going on throughout the game. The details are vague, and there is so much seemingly random imagery that it's hard to know what's happening at first. This type of storytelling feels very pointless and performative to me, where it didn't here. I think the thing that makes it work for me is the simple setup of your player character searching for someone important to them. It's a classic motivation, and it's enough to get you started, and from there they start to sprinkle in the more abstract and bizarre concepts. I doubt any of this will make sense if you haven't played the game, but just trust me when I say there is a surprisingly deep and emotional story just below the surface. I don't want to spoil anything for you, but I do think the story might be hit or miss for people based on how straightforward you like your story to be told. The story of Signalis is anything but straightforward, but it is so well done and meshes with the tone and the art of the game expertly. I think even if you don't vibe with the story, Signalis still has so much more to offer, and I definitely recommend it. Also, there's a fake out ending. It's kind of a spoiler, but also not really. I just feel like mentioning it because it tricked me and my uncle, so just keep that in mind. Also, there's a layer of replayability in this game thanks to it having multiple endings based on how you play the game. If you're more aggressive and kill more enemies, then you'll get a different ending than if you're more conservative with ammo and kill less enemies. It's a bit more complicated than that, but you get the idea. This game is such a testament to just how good indie games can be. Two people who clearly have a lot of love for survival horror decided they want to take a stab at the genre, and this is the result. A fantastic game with a fantastic art style that left me speechless by the time I was done with it. It truly lives up to the horror part of the survival horror as well, without relying on jump scares. The sound design is incredible and really well implemented into the game. The sounds and music alone were enough to get my heart beating faster. It's disturbing in the best way, and I loved it. Look, this game's like $20, and believe me when I say it's worth every cent. Rose Engine has crafted something special with this game, and you should experience it for yourself. You won't regret it. Thanks for watching this video. If you've played this game, then let me know what you thought of it in the comments down below. Subscribe if you feel like it, and I will see you in whatever I do next.